Hey guys, so my battery is actually about to die, but I hope to just already film like an introduction to the wrap-up vlog for the month of May. I'm hoping to do these bi-monthly, so 2 every month, the way that Kitty is doing them over on her channel. If you haven't followed her yet, do so. But so I did these sort of like vlog style wrap-ups for a while, and then I kind of fell off of them just because I fell off of the bandwagon of like editing regularly. And so I hope to return them, but next month will already be a little bit of an exception because I will be away for the majority of the month. So we'll see. We'll see whether maybe next month has to be an exception, but like my personality, one exception often leads to many exceptions. But so, in any case, in the month of May, I haven't really settled on my reading plans yet. There are definitely a few books that I really want to get to, or that I think would be smart to get to this month. The main priority is definitely going to be The Wall of Storms, second book in the Dandelion Dynasty, because according to the schedule, I should be finishing this entire series by August, and I'm definitely behind on that schedule. And so The Wall of Storms, I definitely want to finish before I go on a trip in June. The Veiled Throne would also be nice, but it's like the biggest book in the series, so probably The Veiled Throne will have to be for July, and then the final one, Speaking Bones, will have to be for August, and then we'll be caught up. But The Wall of Stones is definitely the priority, but it's not what I've been reading so far. So I'll just quickly talk about the first thing that I've like carried into the month of May, but it's one that I've... Alright, so I did get rudely interrupted, but that also gave me the chance to go and collect one of the books that I am currently reading, so let's not hate on it too much, I guess. But so, the first book that I'm going to talk about is a book that I've been carrying over. First I carried it over into the month of April, and now I'm carrying it over into the month of May. But I've read a few pages of it in the month of May, but I've decided that it isn't happening, and that is The Rainfall Market by Yo Yong Guang. I think that this is probably a pretty decent one in its genre, which is like translated healing fiction, I've been hearing it referred to. This is basically like Traveling Cat Chronicles, Before the Coffee Gets Cold, all that type of literature. It is cozy, it is very much just looking at like... There's a lot less plot and mainly character. And I've read so many of these that at this point in time I cannot really appreciate them anymore. Like, nothing really happens in them, which is part of what I really enjoyed about them at first. But now I'm just like, it's not really doing anything for me anymore. You know, on the character level, like many of these have been doing the same type of healing as the healing fiction genre title implies. And so it's just like a repeat of the same sort of thing. And while I love revisiting the same sort of thing all the time, I love rewatching certain scenes, rereading certain scenes. But that is things that I've like exactly like reviewing something that I've exactly consumed already. But something new that is actually just a repeat of something that I've seen before or I've read before, that is less to my liking. Originality is something that I value a lot, and so not saying that this isn't original in its sense, but it's just not offering me anything new, and the genre itself has kind of worn out my appreciation for it, I guess, because I've just consumed too much of it. So I need to take a break from the genre at least. I do think that this is probably a decent enough one within the genre, because I do think it sounds interesting at the very least. I am just really struggling with it. I read like 2 pages in it and then I'm already like seeing like when is a chapter over, and so I'm taking breaks after like 3 pages and stuff like that. And so this is a short one. All of these are relatively short. Healing fiction typically is like within the 200 pages or something like that, but it's just gonna take me forever to get through. And like, if at the end of the day that it's not gonna offer me anything in terms of like enjoyment in the first place, but also just like, I don't know, reflection upon the characters or me as a person, then like why am I still going through with it? So I am gonna keep a hold of this one, I think, just in case at some point in time I'm just like craving a book like this, and then I'll give it another chance, because I do think that it has a good premise. So in this one we were looking at a character who I think she's kind of stuck in life and doesn't really know, like she's not really happy with where she is in life at this point in time, and then she's offered a ticket to go to the rainfall market. So basically when the rainy season starts, she gets to go to rainfall market, and then she has to leave before the rainy season is over, and while there she basically gets the chance to kind of choose a different direction to her life. So it sounds interesting in that regards, and like we've already seen her contemplate a first sort of like separate life path, which, and I think the premise here is going to be is we're going to look at like life paths that sound interesting to her, but then she sees like the reality of that life, and then it's like, but actually that isn't really what I want. For example, the first scenario had to do with like going to university, something that she would love to do, but then the life path shows that she at the end of the line is going to be like stuck with like not unable to find a job, and then she's like, yeah, but the whole point of going to university would be to find a fulfilling job afterwards, so if that is not going to be the result, then why would I go to university? So I don't know yet whether the decision, like the goal would be to kind of show like, okay, that, you know, like to reflect more on what you really want and to choose something not just because of the aesthetics of what you think it will be like, but because of a genuine passion, or like, yeah, I don't know yet the direction, but it does have an interesting premise, and I think that there is it could go in a good way, in an interesting way, but I'm just really not in the mood for this book at the moment, and so I'm just gonna DNF it where it is at this point in time, and then we'll see whether I ever revisit it again, maybe in a few years' time when I'm doing a certain on haul, if that book is still on there and I still haven't gravitated back into this genre, then it can go. But for the time being, I do still want to keep it there, because as I said, there are enough like ground stones put within this book to make me think that I could like it. But I think it's just like me at this point in time, this genre at this point in time, I've exhausted it. But then the other book that I'm currently reading is Honor by Elif Shafak. This is a book that I got gifted by Peter, so thank you so much for this one. It was originally on my April TBR, but just didn't get around to it, so I'm using a scroll of extension for Magical Readathon in order to still read it within the month of May. So this is a book about it's a multi-generational story about a Turkish family, and like the most current generation is living in London, and it has to do with honor, as the title suggests. For example, one of the characters, sort of like one of the first sort of like real points of intrigue for me within this one was to find out that like one of the latest generation within this story is in prison at this point in time, and like we find out pretty early on why, but I don't think that I'll tell that, I guess, though it is like the most intriguing section of it, maybe. And it is also like you find out within like the first 1/8 or so of the book, so I guess it's not a spoiler, so I guess I can say it like so. You find out that he's in prison, and you find out that he killed his mother, and so that is, and you know that that the mother died from the beginning, because it's like the opening line, but so yeah, it becomes intriguing to figure out like, okay, what led to this event, what made him kill his mother, and a lot of this book is seemingly at this point in time, because I'm like 100 pages in, is about the honor of women and the ways in which women seemingly dishonor themselves in the eyes of men, in the eyes of society. For example, by you know, like being loose, or by being forced to be loose, by being raped, but not only about the subsequent damage to the honor of women, but also the implications to the honor of men, and the way that men react when things like these happen, and the way that a lot of their actions are also steered through by their sense of honor and their sense of of personal honor and family honor, and the damage that honor can basically do to people and to the people in your life. Because and it's really like, at times I feel like saddened for some of these people, because there's this one instance in which there's a character who's deeply attracted to another person. He falls in love and he's like, I want to marry this person. I'm in love. This is the one for me. And then they find out that there's some question about their sexual integrity. There's some question about whether they are still a virgin or not, and that completely not completely, but that changes their decision. It changes their feelings and puts doubt into their feelings. And it's just sad to see that there are these values that we hold on to within society that can change a feeling to that extent, because it's not necessarily an opinion. That also changes, of course, but it's not just about an opinion changing, it's about a feeling that he felt very deeply before, and how the purity of that feeling is impacted through what other people think and what he has been taught all of his life to think about these events. And in this instance, it's one of those instances where the questionableness of her sexual integrity is due to something that was done to her. And we don't even know whether it happened or not, but he's also saying like that she isn't telling him whether it happened or not, because she wants to know whether this would impact his opinion and his feelings about her without actually telling him whether it's the case or not. And he feels like that doubt would forever plague him. And I do get to some extent that sort of sense of doubt plaguing you, but the fact that not knowing this about his partner, it can have such a big impact, is just sad. It's just sad that we can't just feel our feelings, live our lives, and have those things not matter. And especially in this case, and of course, because in the other way, this is not something that is taken that harshly. If a man were to no longer be sexually pure, in a lot of cases, first of all, it's seen as a bad thing almost for a guy to be a virgin. But this is no issue whatsoever in that regard. Nobody is questioning a guy's purity, or nobody would people would think a woman is being harsh to care about the fact that her husband has had partners before her, right? So why is the opposite true? And so yeah, that is mainly the thematics that are running through this novel so far. And so yeah, I'm just intrigued to get further into it and to get more of the backstory into the murder of the mother character, and to figure out okay, what happened there, and the feel and the inner turmoil of this character that ends up killing his mother. We already see some of that aftermath, because occasionally we get scenes from his prison diary, basically, where we get to see some of the backlash in terms of his inner conflict after the fact. But it'll also be interesting to see some of that inner turmoil leading up to the act itself. This is my 5th Elif Shafak. Elif Shafak is just an amazing author. I have 4 more of her fiction works to go after this one. I'll already be saddened when it's over, but she's still an active writer, so I'm definitely hoping for more of her work in the future, because I just think she has such an amazing talent for putting thoughts into words. And there's just so many times when reading her works that I'm just that is just a perfect sentence. I just want to eat that up. So yeah, that is what I'm currently reading. I'm about 110 pages or something like that in, so a third of the way into this one. And for the time being, I don't think I'll pick something else up, but it's actually a total lie, because tomorrow I'll go back to the office, so I need an audiobook. I haven't decided yet on what my audiobook is going to be. for the commute now. I'll probably have to decide tonight on something, but I think we'll go back to like a light romance for my commute, because that tends to work best, or like I tend to enjoy that the most on my commutes. Something that I don't need to think about too much, don't need to pay like constant attention. If I miss a second of it, I miss a second of it, you know. But so yeah, that's what I'm currently reading. I'll check in with you guys when I'm a little bit further into this one, or when I've contradicted myself and decided to start another book alongside this one. Hello! So we are about a week probably since when I last updated you guys, so I thought it was about time for me to give another update. So I am currently reading A Spear Cuts Through Water, which I haven't talked about yet. I haven't finished Honor yet, but I'm still definitely working on that. I just like wanted a little bit of a more fantastical read for a bit, because Honor is very much sort of like heavy realist fiction, so I needed something light to go along with it. And Spear Cuts Through Water is so far a very interesting book, because basically we have this character who goes to watch a sort of like dream theater, and then a story is told through that, and the story is about, well, we're still kind of uncovering the whole story, but it's it seems to be mainly looking at this one guard called Kima, who is going to go on what seems like a little bit of a quest. So he is just like living his normal life in this sort of like regiment where he is helping to guard a gate. He's very much sort of like the chum of the regiment, I would say, because he gets like the worst lots, but he like takes it all in stride. He never complains, he always just does his job. Loyalty is one of his like prime sort of like qualities, I guess, and he is given an assignment by his general at one point in time, and the assignment, I think, is to accompany a god. I think that is like kind of what it says at the back of this, more or less. Maybe I should also read the back to give you guys actually an actual plan of what this is. The people suffer under centuries-long rule of the Moon Throne. The royal family, the despotic emperor and his monstrous sons, the Three Terrors, hold the countryside in their choking grip. They bleed the land and oppress the citizens with the frightful powers they inherited from the god locked under their palace. But that god cannot be contained forever. And then more of the premise, but so yes, we are going on a little bit of a trip with a god, and I like the writing style in this. Kitty was kind of worried about me and the writing style, because I can be quite particular about writing style, but this to me does not read too flowery. This to me reads beautifully, but without it being, you know, what I don't like when it's flowery is like when there's no substance to the writing, when it's just sort of like packaging and no content, but there's definitely a lot of content here. But this also has like these sections in italics, which are basically like direct representations of thoughts, but they're always like the thought of the person mentioned in the sentence before, which creates this sort of like weird flow to the writing, but I enjoy that so far at least. But so yeah, I am one section into this one, so I'm 90 pages into the 500-page book. I've been going pretty slowly, but that's also because my reading has just been going slowly all week, so I'm hoping that during the weekend it can kind of pick up. But I also think I'm going to start a vlog for the International Booker Prize to get at least some of those books read as well. So that is also going to derail the reading for the 2 books that I'm currently in. And I've just bought 4 books that I'm also dying to get started on. So we'll see. I had certain plans for what I wanted to read throughout the month of May, but maybe they'll get completely thrown overboard because the Booker Prize was not in the plans and these books definitely weren't part of the plan. So we'll see. Spontaneity was the goal for 2025, right? So here we go. Let's be spontaneous. Hello, it's been forever, I feel like, since I updated you guys. So last time I updated you guys, I think it was before last weekend. So I did finish 2 books in the meantime. I finished On the Calculation of Volume 1 by Solveig Ball. This is a book nominated for the Booker International Shortlist. It is a Danish book. It is the first in a septology, which is a time loop series. It is a time loop series, but it's a time loop series series about like a random regular day in the life of a normal everyday person. So this woman is basically in Paris on like her last day of her trip there. She's going to be returning tomorrow, but when she goes to sleep on the 18th of November, when she wakes up, it hasn't turned to the 19th of November. She has gotten back to the start of another 18th of November. And so we're kind of reading her diary, which kind of starts on day 121, in which she's recounting, you know, like what has happened in all of these time loops up until that point. And it just becomes, and even though nothing like major happens throughout any of these reiterations of the same day, I found it to be really interesting, and to see the impact on her and sort of like the tactics that she has during different sections of these reiterations is also really interesting. You know, there's a period in which she's like trying to figure out what happened, of course, originally, then the time in which she is like actively informing her partner every single day again of what has happened, of the fact that she's stuck in this time loop, and kind of trying to go about these things together, trying to kind of like play around with seeing the impact that they can have, and then the spirits in which she kind of like gives up on that and is living in the house as kind of a stranger, like as a ghost, not making her presence known to her husband, because she was supposed to be in Paris, so her husband isn't expecting her to be there, so she can kind of like go about her life as a ghost in the house. She knows his schedule by heart, of course, because she's been living so many iterations of the same day in that house with him. And then there's a sort of like mental breakdown section, of course, as well, where she is where she is basically like leaving the house, going somewhere else. Like there's definitely some interesting things to think about when it comes to her exploration of this world. And what actually is really interesting, in my opinion, about this as well, is that the time loop is not like a perfect loop, because she is aging, which I don't think I've ever seen a time loop that long, of course, so I don't think I've ever experienced it. So she has to, you know, like cut her nails, cut her hair and stuff like that, because that keeps on growing, indicating that she is aging. But also she is impacting the world around her. So if they go to if she buys stuff from the supermarket, for example, the next day it might not be available in the supermarket anymore, for example. So she has to, for example, start spreading out where she goes for groceries, because there's this possibility for her to be, you know, like depleting the world food storages if, you know, like this loop is going to go on forever. So I thought that was also really interesting, because I don't think I've ever seen a time loop where the protagonist actually has an impact on the world, where it doesn't fully reset the next day. But so yeah, that one is the first one I finished, and then I also read The Perfections by Vincenzo. I still don't know his last name, so that will have to be on the screen, which was a good read. I gave it 4 stars because I did enjoy the experience of listening to it. I would definitely struggle if I were to read it physically, and it is a book in which nothing really happens. It is an account of the life of 2 millennials who are basically sort of like digital nomads living in Berlin. They immigrated there from a country in the south of Europe, and it's a lot about their immigrant experience, and a lot of the book is about like the imperfection of life and the pursuit of happiness, how, you know, they never fully feel happy or satisfied, even though they are living what to the eye of their social media follower appears to be a perfect life. So I enjoyed this one definitely, but I definitely don't think it's for everybody, and it's also one that, you know, it's not gonna stick with me, you know, like in a few weeks time, and nothing about this will really stand out to me anymore, and it will just be something that I remember as being like a nice listen but that'll have been it. And then I also finished throughout this week a audiobook called Last Night by Mary McLaughlin, I think it was. It also has a slightly different title, which is like About Last Night or Just Last Night or something like that. This is a rom-com, I guess, which it is slightly different than most rom-coms that I've read. It is very much a book about grief. So we're following this one girl who's part of this small friend group, and early on within the novel, the friend group is hit with a tragedy, and a lot of it is about the grief of that, but also about secrets within the group that become revealed at that point in time, and that kind of endanger the survival of this friend group. Will the friend group be able to move on from having kept these types of secrets from one another for all that time? Because the acts themselves, the secret itself probably isn't that important, but the fact that it was kept secret for such a long time definitely has an impact on the trust within the friend group. And I feel like it is still a romantic read, but the romance is definitely the type of romance that I really enjoy, where it's like it's not the main point of the book. Please. It's like not the main focus of the book. It almost becomes like secondary or tertiary in terms of the plot line, and it develops super slowly. And I think, maybe early on when I was already thinking like, oh, maybe we are going to have these characters come together, have these characters understand one another and grow to love one another. But it was definitely still a very wild gamble at the very beginning. So it is time to talk about some other stuff that I've also finished within the month so far. So I'm going to talk about two things together. Might actually be followed by a third one in this series still this month, but that we'll have to figure out later in this vlog. But so yeah, I finished Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone and the sequel Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets illustrated edition. In reality, I listened to them on the commute to work, and then I went through the illustrations like either before or after. But yeah, I wanted something easy for me to listen to on the commute that I don't need to put too much brain power into. I know these books by heart, and I never really consumed them in the illustrated edition, so I thought like, okay, if I go through them like this and then I just look at the illustrations afterwards, then I will have experienced it like that as well once. But so yeah, that's what I'm going to be listening to on the commute for the coming, I don't know how long, because I'm going to be away for most of June, so probably at least until like July somewhere, or maybe even into August, depending on whether I listen to more of it outside of the commute. But so yeah, that's what I've been listening to on the commute. And then the final thing that I've read so far, or that I've finished so far, is The Lamb by Lucy Rose. So I have a weekend reading vlog for this one, in which I will give more like updates like throughout time. So if you want to have like more of my, not in depth, but sort of like more of an evolution of my thoughts with this book, then you can go and check that one out. But so this is a cannibalism book in which we are following our protagonist Margot from the age of 4 years old, which basically the first line is like a really nice hook into the book, I guess. On my 4th birthday, I plucked 6 severed fingers from the shower drain. So yes, cannibalism book. So Margot's mother is a cannibal, and she lives in this sort of like shack in the woods. And so when hikers get lost in the woods, or when they have some sort of an accident in the woods, they will often stumble upon her little cottage, and then their feet for the father, I guess. So this is following Margot and her mother, as a new element is also kind of introduced into this family unit later on within the book. I enjoyed this one. Like, I really enjoyed like 3/3 of it or something like that. Like 3/3 is that's not accurate maths. 3/4 of this I really enjoyed. I liked the writing style. I enjoyed the cadence of the story. I just feel like the final fourth for me felt a little bit too like drawn out or something like that, or at that point in time I just was like ready for it to end. I was just kind of like waiting for it to kind of come to an end, and so I felt a little bit more impatient with it towards that end than I had throughout the first 3/4, in which I was just like along for the ride, enjoying the experience of it. Like, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It wasn't a book that made me go like, ooh, I need to know what's going to happen now. But it was just like I was really enjoying the pacing, the story, the writing, everything about it, and then that final quarter or so was just like a little bit like too much for me. It was just a little bit like, it was just a little bit, it should have been a little bit tighter for me, or, I don't know, maybe there was something else involved, but for me personally, I was just like a little bit out of it at that point in time. But so yeah, that's all I've read so far. I'm close to finishing something else, probably tomorrow, so there will still definitely be some more that are finished still throughout this month. I just started a massive 800-page book, so probably that's not going to be finished because I have less than a week to go within a month. But so yeah, let's try to still get a few things done throughout this month so we can spice up this little wrap up with some more books. I think we're currently at 6 or something for the month, which isn't bad, but like I tend to go closer to the 10, so let's see if we can still get there. So we are the 30th of May, but I'm already going to be rounding off this May wrap up because I know I'm not finishing anything anymore for the rest of this month. So I did still finish one more book throughout the month, and that is The Spirit Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. So this is I think I talked about this book at the beginning of this video, so I already gave a little bit of an introduction into it, and in the end I really enjoyed it. It was the type of thing where for a while there throughout the book as well, it was just like getting better and better and better. I think in the end I enjoyed like the 4th part more than I enjoyed the 5th part or something like that, but like barely, I guess. So it was going very, very steadily climbing, and then like the 5th part was like just a little bit less of my thing until the very end of that section as well, because like the end of that part was also like very emotional and epic, and like a lot of things were going down, and the title of the book came into play there as well, which I always really enjoy. But so I really enjoyed this one. It has like great characters. I really enjoyed following Kima and June. I enjoyed sort of like the twist on a tragic trope that we get here. I mean, like, twist is saying a lot, but maybe if you've read it, you understand what I mean here. But there's a certain tendency that this book kind of goes against in the end. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and I definitely want to give more Simon Jimenez a try, but I also do want to check out some interviews with him, because there are really interesting sections to this book, and a lot of the time throughout this book I kind of felt like this was very rich in history, and you definitely had this feeling of like a rich cultural history, cultural background, and I'm curious whether that is like rooted in reality, because this never really fully talks about our world history in such specific terms, and so I'm curious whether this is just Filipino history, for example, that is being used and like presented in a fantastical, magical realist sort of way, or whether it's just like that Simon Jimenez was able to create such a rich world with such a background to it that it really like feels it. But it definitely felt, because of maybe the 2 layers to the story as well, it definitely felt like there was some real world history and culture hidden in there that I wouldn't mind finding out more about. And then we get to the end of the month, so there are 3 books that I'm currently still reading that are going to jump into June. So I'm just gonna mention them. One is already been in this vlog, that is Honor by Elif Shafak. So I continued a little bit beyond what I said through during that clip, but I haven't continued much further. I'm still like a third of the way into that book, so that is going to be for the first week of June. Same for The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu, which I think I mentioned at the beginning of this video was sort of like my priority for this month. But so yeah, it's definitely getting read before I leave on the 8th of June. But yeah, I mean, I'm like 250 pages or something like that into it right now. I'm really in the swing of things, so I don't necessarily think that will be a problem. Like, it's still 600 pages to read in like a 1 week time period, but I definitely think that is doable for that book. And then I also have the third Harry Potter, which I also kind of mentioned in here, that I will finish throughout the first week of June on my commute to work, because I am, I don't know, halfway through that, probably something like that. So yeah, those are the 3 things that are going to jump into the month of June. But so yeah, I think the month of June has been fine. I read 7 books, I think, throughout the month, which I, like earlier on in the previous clip, was saying like that's a little bit low for me, but actually for 2025 it's right on cue, I think, because there are 2 months in which I've read more, there are 2 months in which I've read less. So, you know, like this year has been going a little bit slower reading wise, and that's also been fine, because I definitely want to take the pressure away of reading and taking the pressure away from the quantity of what I'm reading. So I'm happy to read a little bit less than I typically do, if that just means putting less pressure on myself to finish stuff or make sure that I get a ton of books read within a month. But so yeah, I think this month had some really good reading in it. And you know, it isn't over yet. I'm still really enjoying, as I said, The Wall of Storms definitely is something that is currently really like I'm really eager to keep on continuing in. So yeah, I love that for me, and so hopefully we can carry that over into the month of June. But June is going to be a month in which there's going to be a lot less reading, because I will be on holiday for 3 out of the 4 weeks of this month, and during that holiday I do expect to get some reading done, but I don't expect it to be a whole ton. I'm taking 3 books with me, and we'll see whether I get to those even. But so yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts on any of these books, if you've read any of them or are interested in any of them. And yeah, see you guys for the next video. Bye!